All right, hello and welcome everyone. It is finally time to talk about Voruna Prime. So we have Voruna Prime here, and thankfully we have a hotfix with some changes that let me actually do this video on the couple of builds that I think are worth playing on Voruna and the couple of different ways that she can be played. For that though, before we get into the actual builds themselves, let's talk about the shards. So I am on 2 yellow and 3 purple shards for this setup. And there are a few options for different shard setups that are going to be good here that I want to discuss. So we're on 1 casting speed. This is pretty much never going to leave here for me. I think 1 casting speed is really, really nice here. It's by no means required. The other yellow is a max energy is filled on spawn. Definitely not necessary, but really nice for just starting up missions very easily and quickly getting into whatever of the kind of 2 loops you want to do very, very fast without needing any base energy. You could, of course, always overforma, but that's a bit more expensive than just throwing in a yellow shard, I think. And then alternatively, we have our 3 purple shards, which are our 3 equilibrium effect shards. These are not needed in this quantity. 3 is probably overkill. You need at least 1 in some cases for this version of the build. But again, there's a couple different ways to do this. On my original Voruna, the last time we did a Voruna video, I was using a bunch of blue shards, and that is still definitely viable. This could be 3 blue energy max shards. And you'll just change out one of the mods in the build to kind of reverse the effects. So, they're not necessary, but certainly 1 would be very nice to really clean up that energy economy and kind of make it perfect for most cases. With that, the actual builds themselves, we have 2 builds. Now, one I want to talk about is the better build. We're going to talk about this first because it's basically exactly the same as the last build I showed off whenever we had Prey of Dinar and everything happening, and like it got its changes and so on and so forth. This is just the same build as that with one particular change, which is with Prime Flow and the higher energy max that the Prime has, you can go the Equilibrium Shards, where you get like 500 energy, and you get 90% of the Equilibrium effect instead of 110% of the Equilibrium effect, which is a pretty small change. Overall, I would say this is better stats. But if you either don't have Prime Flow and you do have Equilibrium, or if you do have blue shards and you don't have purple shards, or some combination thereof, you can absolutely put an Equilibrium instead of Prime Flow. And for that, you'll, of course, go down to 180 energy. So you would want to swap out those purple shards for blue energy max shards instead, which give you 225, putting you at just over 400 instead of just over 500. That's kind of the swap you can make on shards. Otherwise, if you are not going to go with shards, you don't have shards, I would swap out Augur Reach, which notably you will need an additional Forma for unless you drop down out of Archon Stretch. So that's also a thing you can kind of just go for towards the future. Maybe go down to regular Stretch and go up to Prime Flow or Equilibrium, whichever one, you know. And then later, whenever you get shards, you could upgrade to Archon Stretch and go for the upgrade to Augur Reach as well to offload some of your stats into your shards. All nice things to do. This build functions and is pretty much the same. You use your 1 to go invisible with a melee weapon. You have your 3 active. You use your 2 to prime enemies, hitting the Prey of the Dinar enemies, and then you slam attack them to murder them, and then you use Roar to boost the damage of all of this stuff to the moon. Melee slam attack weapons are generally just going to be better and more damage than what you're going to get out of the quadruped build. This keeps Voruna's kit completely vanilla and uses Ulfrin's Descent. If you're going to use Ulfrin's Descent, you'll notice that this build is quite similar, with the exception that we absolutely must be running Ulfrin's Endurance. You can technically skip out on Prey of Dinar, though I wouldn't suggest it, but Ulfrin's Endurance is not optional if you want to be using her for in anything that resembles an effective capacity, because without being able to consistently keep up that multiplier, it is just going to be a pain, and it's going to be a huge energy drain as well. Talk about some other things in the build that I do want to put out there because there's been some misinformation that has been spread around. The 2 arcanes that I'm using here are Arcane Impetus, which is absolutely phenomenal, basically tailor-made for Voruna because her 2 is going to stack you up on this very easily, giving you a very large amount of ability strength and also a good amount of ability efficiency, which is going to counteract the blind rage that we have in our build, as we do want a good bit of strength as well. And I'm on Molt Augmented. So after 250 kills, this is just consistently and always 60% strength. More strength makes everything that we do better on either of the builds, but there are some other things that need to be addressed. So the first and foremost is the one that a lot of people are going to bring up, which is Crepuscular. This is, while invisible, gain plus 30% ability strength and a 3x final critical damage multiplier. So, you can very easily use the plus 30% ability strength on this. No problem at all. Cast your 1 and then cast your 4, and that will give you the plus 30% ability strength right off the rip. So half of the effect of Augmented, but right away, reasonable to consider. That 3x final critical damage, however, if you are using your 4 plus your 1, you become visible the moment you left-click an enemy. That means that Crepuscular turns off for the initial hit, the important hit, of your 4. That is unfortunate, but is the way that it works. You can force this to work, but it's very finicky, and the only real way to force it to work is to use a Invis dog like Hurras, or well, only the Hurras, or an Invisibility Sentinel Shade to have invisibility turned on that way first, and then use your 1 for its benefits, and then whenever you use your 4, as long as you obviously don't shoot guns, but you can't do that in your 4, you won't become visible, and you will get the 3x final critical damage. This I don't think is worth it. Using a Hurras on her is perfectly reasonable, and you can get some good buffs like alongside with that build, and of course you can get the double resources and all of those things. But in general, I think that this is too finicky, and I really wish it just worked with her 4 and her 1. But because you become visible during that first hit, it does not work with the critical damage, but the strength does work. So that's worth noting. The other thing that's worth noting that I've seen suggested a lot that I really dislike is Arcane Ice Storm. So this, at max level on enemy frozen, you get 2% ability strength and ability duration for 15 seconds, which stacks 20 times. So this is 40% ability strength and 40% ability duration, but only whenever you are getting ice procs or cold procs on your 2. So when you're getting cold procs on your 2 and spreading them, generally that will freeze the enemies and stack this up, and in theory that will happen, you know, at least once every 15 seconds in like a very ideal scenario. But plain and simple, 40% strength and 40% duration versus the 60% strength I could get out of Augmented, or the very easy 30% strength I could get out of Crepuscular. I would really not want to fulfill this condition or need to fulfill this condition in order to get these stats, and I'd much rather be on the 2 other options, even though Crepuscular's critical damage isn't going to work most of the time for the build if I'm using my 4. It is worth noting that if you are not using your 4, your hits from your melee will work with Crepuscular on the better version of the build, so that is an option for you if you want more critical damage for whatever melee you happen to have equipped, which can be good with a number of different slam weapons. So that's just a discussion about some of the other like viable arcanes and how they actually work. I really don't feel like you need more duration than the 155. Our Shroud of Dinar, especially on this build, lasts more than 20 seconds, and we are not going to have to consistently refresh that like we would with this build, as that is one of the benefits of using Ulfrin's Descent. Now, other benefits of Ulfrin's Descent is that this has had some changes. Number one, it's more thematically appropriate for Voruna, because this is going to have you do quadrupedal running. That's why it's called what it's called now, as the Prime will run around on all fours and have special unique animations. In addition to that, this has received a boost to speed that is actually pretty fast, and it can be capitalized on in a number of ways. Because you are not using your primary slot, because you're going to be in your 4 all the time, you can use Amalgam Serration. The plus 25% sprint speed does work here. Additionally, the Okina Prime have a plus 30% movement speed boost, which also works here. You can still use the Praetos, but the thing that is worth noting about the Praetos is there's a little bit of misinformation that's been going around about this. This plus 30% parkour velocity works not on you sprinting around on the ground. The thing that works about the Praetos is the plus 20% sprint speed that's on Evolution 2. So if you value both individually, then Praetos is still going to be good for your movement. But if you value just the run speed, I will say that I do personally think that Okina is a stronger selection for that purpose of making you much, much faster. Other than that, things like the Synoid Gamma Core, of course, can just like be equipped and will pulse energy and such, which can be useful, but is relatively minor. But I just wanted to call out those two things for statistics. We are going to be using those in this video. Otherwise, though, just to call out other pieces for builds for the better build, the traditional thing that I usually suggest bringing is the Archititron. That build really hasn't changed much at all. This is just for doing slam attacks. You will commonly, utilizing her 1 plus roar, hit for like 40 to 60 million damage on enemies, which is quite a lot, and also notably quite a lot more than you will normally need. So even though I would say pretty definitively that this is the better build, if you want to use this build for thematic purposes, I think you'll see that it's pretty reasonable on its own and has a couple of upsides. For that, let us show off, just to note real quick, because I know a lot of people forget this. Varuna's heads each have a hold function, so her 1, 2, 3, and 4 all have hold functions on them that I want to go through real quick. Your 1 makes you very fast, increased parkour velocity. This will combine with the Praetos and have you really bullet jumping around, which can be very nice. Your 2, which is the one you're going to have on the vast majority of the time, is complete immunity to status effects, which is very useful. Your 3 is increased heavy attack efficiency. You're never going to use this. This is pretty much totally useless. Even if you're doing heavy slam attacks, you're going to opt for just like, having your galvanized and stuff give you the static ability, and you're not going to use your 3. Your 4, however, is notable if you're going to be keeping your 4 around. This is a get out of jail free card. That's the extra life. So if you would die instead, don't every so often, which is, a reasonable little positive to keeping your 4 around, as you can't do this if you replace your 4 with Roar. But normally, usually you're going to just remain on the status effects. Now, for your 4, you're going to go down in, and then you have this unique running animation. It's got unique audio. It's got, of course, like, the footstep sound effects and everything like that. And that's all well and good. And you're pretty fast in this, as you can see. You are considerably faster with your 1 active, to the point where you actually get like the wind effect that I'm sure you can hear as I am like running even in these circles, and you can build up speed as you run just forward. It is quite fast, and I think it's enjoyable and different. It's kind of similar actually to the way Volt gets around. So if you enjoy that, this might be a reason why you might want to use this build more so in particular. With that, it of course does need to kind of build up, but you can build this up by just using your 1 plus your 2 augment. So if you have your 3 active, you can hit 2 on an enemy, and then you just left click them, and then that will do the 5 effects plus the big slash proc from your left click. Now, it's worth noting here, this is not perfect. You are going to have to gamble on the 5 statuses that you put on an enemy initially, and then you are going to have to hope most of the time that you get a slash proc on that enemy, so you can give them a big slash proc that will spread with your 4. That is the ideal situation. Either you get a bunch of damaging statuses that are just going to kill everybody anyway, or one of those statuses is a slash proc, so you can spread your big one, and that is like the ideal. Of course, you can do that with any given melee weapon, and the downsides of this mode are worth noting. So number 1, if we look real quickly at just like how this attack works, you will build this up. So if we just like kill some like regular enemies here, we're going to need to actually get the kill here. You have to get the literal killing blow, which is not hard on lower level enemies, but whenever you get into these higher levels can be challenging, where you will see that I'm out of my 4 now. This is one of the things about this, is if you do not build this up, or if you are trying to build this up on, higher level enemies, it can be a problem. There you go. You can see we can get that kill, and we have our multiplier. So that damage multiplier, as you get kills, will go up. So as you get more kills, that'll go up. It'll cap out at 10x. And then once you are at 10x, it will just stay there indefinitely. The little slashes you see is I can only use this attack 5 times unless I am getting kills with it, in which case it will restore. So you want to be killing multiple enemies in one swing to go up. And if you're killing the enemy that you're hitting each time, then you will remain at like max stacks of your 4. So you can always just stay in it at max damage, which is of course your goal. You want to be using this pretty much always while you're invisible. Your 1 does not fully break, like it will stay on, it'll go off for a moment and then turn back on if you're using your 4 with your 1. With any other kind of attack, it will turn off automatically, so you have to cast your 1 a lot more on the non-4 version of this build. All that stuff is worth noting. Big things that are really worth considering. While you're in your 4, you can't use any of your guns or anything. So, problems that need guns to solve them, not something you're going to be able to do without exiting your 4. Exiting your 4 is going to remove that multiplier. So, getting nullified, removing that multiplier, having violence show up and turning off your abilities, anything like that, is going to mess with the flow of using your 4 longer term. Solutions to that, for nullifiers, you can use your operator. I know a lot of people don't have an invested operator that's going to be able to just take down nullifiers easily, but it is an option. Separately from that, you can use like Tazakor Sentinels or other pets that can handle nullifiers for you. That is also, I think, a bit clunky. I generally prefer to be on Diriga, who's going to be proccing Archon Stretch for me very consistently, and also applying a bunch of status to enemies. But you can also, use a Tazakor Sentinel, and that's going to be just fine. These are all things to consider on like which build you want to use. I think that between the 2 builds, this is fun and feels thematic for Voruna, and I totally understand that a lot of people are going to want this as their experience playing Voruna, and it is not so much worse than the other variant of the build that we've been using. that it is like not usable or something. But it is just notable and worth understanding that I do think that it is worse outside of being quite fast and fun. But with this is the build that we are going to be showing off today. Obviously, the other build is just the same as the last one that we posted, and I think it's worth showing off the new stuff for Voruna. Yeah, hopefully that's been like an exhaustive look at like her abilities. Other things that I guess are worth noting if you are unaware is that her 3 is her energy economy. One of the reasons that we want equilibrium is that whenever you get melee kills while your 3 buff is on, you're going to get a bunch of health orbs from enemies. Your 4 counts as a melee only for that purpose. And if you don't have an equilibrium effect, that means killing enemies with your 4 is not going to give you energy, which can make it hard to maintain your energy economy, which is why you want absolutely at least one equilibrium effect somewhere in your build, as it will be functionally infinite energy the vast majority of the time. And that is all the things that are worth noting. You'll extend your 3's duration by killing enemies that have a bunch of statuses on them. Your 2 puts a bunch of statuses on enemies, and that is kind of the loop. You're going to use your 1, get a marked enemy, hit that marked enemy with your 2, be in your 4, hit that marked enemy with your 4, to murder them and loop it up, while your 3 gives you plenty of resources to keep doing that indefinitely, and you stay safe in invisibility. It's pretty good and fun. It's an enjoyable time, and yeah. So let's jump in to Tav and show off the fun version of the build, as you are all very aware how good the good version of the build is, I think. All right, jumping in to Kuva Survival. This is gonna be it'll be a good time. There's a few things about the way that Voruna deals damage that I think are worth noting. And, like, it'll only really be easy to explain in the tile set itself, to be honest. Because there's just a few quirks to the way Voruna works that are a bit different than how many other Warframes need to engage with things. Specifically in, like, what Voruna is looking for. I still have the Archititron on, so we're actually going to be a little bit slower in our 4. Whoops. But it will be good for the purposes of creating a bunch of energy at the beginning here by doing a slam attack. But we are, of course, going to be using our 4. Notable things. So, number 1, as you can see, an enemy that is getting marked by my 1 with the augment is going to be glowing bright orange. That is your energy color. I would highly advise choosing a very visually prominent color: bright pink, bright orange, bright green, neon this, neon that, for your energy color for Voruna. Otherwise, it can be very easy for the colors to get lost in the environment, and for you to not really know what enemy you're supposed to be hitting with your 2 plus your 1 plus your 4 combo. That is like the number 1 with a bullet thing to know, is that you do want to be able to see it multiple rooms away. As you can see there, I ran away from the target by accident. That is the big thing. The other big thing is that your 4 does not spread off of the marked target. You have to hit them with your 2, otherwise you're not going to get the enhanced spread that you want for being able to spread through groups of enemies, as you are seeing here, and murder them all. Next up is that if you can chain enemies that are marked, even if they already have a bunch of statuses, you should do that, as that is going to just like keep cascading more and more distance. So even if they are already going to die from the procs that you inflicted on them from the previous spread, it's definitely worthwhile to do another big spread that is going to go almost 50 meters because of the vast range on this build. Though it is worth noting that we do have less range because we do have to find a spot for Ulfrin's Endurance in the build, which is a little more limiting because we do lose our Augur Reach that way. But that is the rub. The other thing that's worth noting is that this tile, which is normally very, very, very good for really so many Warframes, where it's like a nice flat area that is going to be ideal for killing enemies for most setups, is fine with Voruna, but actually not what she wants. And the reason for that is because Varuna's 2-1 augment setup doesn't care about walls. And because it doesn't care about walls, it only cares about distance from you. You don't care how crowded the tile set is, as long as enemies will spawn nearby. So tile sets that are like more open and circular are fine. These will work, but you really want compact tiles where enemies will spawn very close. There are a few Kuva tiles that do fit the bill for this, but we might not run into them here. There's like the very like tight series of tunnels that has like the turrets outside and all kinds of things like that. And there's also like the very tall tile where enemies will spawn above and below you on different floors that are all very reasonable and good choices for like the way that Voruna spreads. You can also actually use an area like this where you have kind of like this bubble outside of like this hallway across, if you can see on the map here. where I'll be able to hit those enemies as they try and come up the stairs and everything. That's also a good and like reasonable way to go with this. You will also have to contend with marking enemies that are up the stairs and things, though, which can be a bit inconvenient. But staying in like an area like this where enemies are not going to be able to like do much but run towards you and get within your proximity before like you'd even realistically really be able to see them is going to be ideal, where I'm able to cover a much like tighter zone with denser spawns. So that's like kind of what you're looking for whenever you're looking to like damage down a group of enemies. Acolytes. So Acolytes are vulnerable to your 2 plus your 4 here. That is a thing that they will not like hugely. And notably about your 4 that I've noticed is that it will knock them down, and they pretty much just won't get up from that. The slash procs will chunk them very hard, and they just stay hard knocked down for quite a bit of time, which is hilarious, but also means that if you hit Violence with 1 hit of your 4, then that usually means that Violence is out of commission, and if he didn't already get to turn off your abilities, you're pretty safe from it. So that is worth noting as like a good way to deal with the Acolytes, and is also hilarious. So that's just like a nice thing that has been happening. Not sure if feature or bug, potentially. Maybe the Acolytes are just into that. But yeah, it is just a thing to note about dealing with the Acolytes, as that would normally be problematic for Violence to show up. If you respond quickly enough, it won't matter. But that is just a thing that is worth noting here. We're almost at that 5-minute mark. I did spend a little bit of time, running around trying to talk about the tiles and things, which of course is going to lower our overall KPM. And we did not find a particularly good tile. This tile is rather mediocre for the Voruna output, of course. And that is, of course, going to drastically affect her. I will say, I have had anywhere between like 100 and 120 KPM with this version of the build, so it definitely can output the murder, as it were, if you need to bring this to like an EDA or an ETA, because all your weapons and all your melees are all just terrible. Definitely reasonable and viable. Like if your other choices are Limbo and Banshee, yeah, I'd be bringing this every single time. But yeah, it's not maybe going to beat everything that you might want to bring to those randomized modes, but it is going to be definitely quite a few things, even though it is less optimized. It is also a benefit that is worth noting of this build. It's totally self-contained. Like, you don't need any stat sticks, any particular types of melees, or anything like that. And even though the only real requirement for using the other build is that you have a weapon that is worth using at all, it is not a requirement of this build. It's totally self-contained. It's fully the stuff that Voruna herself can do, really, in any situation. So it's only going to be limited by the downsides that are already present in the build. You're not going to be taking on the tank with her 4, or doing much to like the Murmur boss either, because I believe the Murmur boss is actually not targetable by her 4, so you won't be able to use it at all. Those are some, various downsides that are worth considering that this just won't be able to function on. But it's all kinds of just considerations like that. I do think, to reiterate, that the fun factor that people are going to be like wanting this for, which is like, why would you want to use the 4? And like the reason is like, oh yeah, because it's more Voruna, right? It's more on theme. It feels more werewolf. It feels more like, like hound, whatever that like vibe you're looking for is. Like, it just is, it's its own unique, like, unique animations for the effect. You want to be fast. Like, any of those types of considerations are all very reasonable. And like I said earlier, I don't think that this version is like enough worse that it should be a big consideration in terms of being negative. But yeah. It also is easier to run around and pick up all of the life support from the enemies that have died far away. So that is also a consideration to make for this build as well. Yeah, it's definitely very fun. The fun factor plus is very big, and I think that probably, I would say, for the vast majority of people, this is more of a fix than maybe what I would have really liked to see, which would have been making her 4 like a pseudo-exalted, so it could be on the same level as something like Gara's 1 or Korra's 1 or something like that. That would have been awesome, and I think I would have preferred that in terms of a performance perspective. But if it was that or the like all 4s running, I think that most players probably would have preferred what we got, which is the unique animations and the speed boost. So that is, just how it goes. Can't have everything with new Warframes, new content on the horizon and such, of course. Yeah, generally like decent performance. We're at 734 in terms of kills. We're right under that like 100 KPM that we usually really want to see. And I've mostly just, like, you know, stuck to this area that, as I've discussed, is suboptimal. Got another assassin showing up. Mania will be here to get trounced. Mania, where you at? There you are, bud. Yeah, we can just, you know, run him around a little bit. He's not a big fan of it. Being a chew toy, not ideal for them. But yeah, it's a good time. Like, you know, Voruna has like a lot of upsides that she is like maintaining here. Status immunity, of course, being a chief among them. It is worth noting that some people have floated the idea of building Voruna as a persistence Warframe, because technically with the stat changes on her prime, she does fit the bill for a full Umbral setup that activates persistence, and your 2 makes you status immune, so you don't need more than the 700 armor. With the general survivability tools that you should normally have access to, with like her invisibility and just like her ability to be status immune and just everything else I've already mentioned, I really don't think that that is a particularly compelling option. Voruna is like one of the Warframes that is the best at shield gating, and you know, she has all of the tools at her disposal to make that not really a big pain in the ass for her. So I'm not a big fan of building her out in that way, but it is an option that I guess is worth discussing. As if you just like never want to be invisible, if that is your goal, it seems like it's on the table, but you probably will have to subsume Gloom for it. But if you don't want to be invisible, her 1 becomes a pretty open slot for that kind of thing. But I definitely could not possibly advocate in terms of effectiveness for removing her 1 ever, as her 1 is a critical part of her kit, and you will lose a tremendous amount of damage on her 4 by removing it. So unless your desire is simply to be visible, and then I would maybe look in the options and just turn off the invisibility effect instead, probably wouldn't go that direction with it. Yeah, we're just about at that 10-minute mark. We're just under 1,000 kills, and I've been, you know, as usual, the yapping debuff from discussing all the things is a little bit in effect. But yeah, it is a perfectly like usable build that I think is a whole lot of fun, especially whenever you're, you know, if you want to take this into like capture missions, rescue missions, missions that you'd like want to do fast, and maybe you don't enjoy using Titania or Nova or other fast Warframes, and this is more like the vibe that you want, then she's also a solid choice for that. Like, this is a good amount of speed. This is comparable to our faster Warframes in general. And it doesn't have bad controls or like lock you into directions or have bad turning radiuses either. So it's really just a pretty good deal all around. But yeah, that's what's up with Voruna. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Turns out she's still quite a good Warframe. And I will see you tomorrow, where we're going to be doing the Guilty Super Boss stuff, should be. All right, thank you for watching, everyone. It is time to thank the patrons, and there are so many of you now, including our $10 patrons, who I will name now: Atheon, Ith, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Barkus, Nuven, Plotomatic, Brutus Salazar, Canolathra, Clobworld 3, Deathly NL, Dylan Dworsky, Athrain, James Harthorn, JC4 Science, Jesse Haynes, Josh, Nightcar 1981, Lord Ian, Luzanth, Luckmod, Matt Holt, Mike Kiesman, Mikakel, Michta, Nerve, One Man Wolfpack, Rellerin, Ruby, S267, Sanyu _ Season, Sharp247, Snap the Mag, The Coupon of Death, Waifu Wars, Baudad, Zerafir, and Zero Weebs Plan, and all of the $5 patrons and $2 patrons as well. Thank you all so very much. There are so many of you now. There is very little time to say anything else at the end of these videos, but I really appreciate the support a great deal.